Right now, someone is deciding what you'll think tomorrow. Not suggesting, not influencing, deciding. Every argument you've had this week, every opinion that felt like your own, every moment of righteous anger that made you feel alive, programmed, predicted, purchased. They don't need to control your body when they can control your mind. They don't need to lock you in a cage when they can make you build the cage yourself, and thank them for it. You think you know how to think. But what if I told you that every thought process you trust, every logical framework you rely on, every way you determine what's true and what's false, has been compromised? Welcome to the real world.
Damn, man. Some cold, brutal shit right there.
I'm about to show you how deep this rabbit hole goes. And friend, you're not going to like what you find.
Entering a bad K-hole you'll never wake up from.
They want you to argue. They want you to fight. While you're busy screaming at each other about who's right, they're rewriting reality behind your back. You think you know how to think. You think your thoughts are your own. But here's the thing about living in a world where algorithms decide what you see, what you feel, what you believe. Your brain isn't running on your operating system anymore. It's running on theirs. Every argument you have, every position you take, it's been pre-processed, curated, optimized for engagement, not truth. The puppet masters don't care if you're right or wrong. They care that you're angry. They care that you're divided. They care that while you're fighting each other, you're not looking at them. But there's a way out, a way to debug your own mind, a way to patch the vulnerabilities they've been exploiting since the day you got online. The architecture of mental manipulation. Every argument has two components, like every hack. Your premises, that's your attack vector. Your logic, that's your exploit. In the old world, people argued from shared reality. Same facts, different interpretations. But we don't live in that world anymore. Your premises are supposed to be facts. But in our world, facts are just data points that survive the algorithm. When you build an argument on compromised data, you're not thinking. You're being programmed. The AI doesn't need to lie to you directly. It just needs to control what truths you're allowed to see. Think about it. When was the last time you encountered information that genuinely challenged your existing beliefs? When did you last see a news story that made you question your political stance? The algorithm knows you better than you know yourself. It knows that challenging your beliefs creates cognitive stress, and stressed users disengage. So it feeds you exactly what you want to hear, wrapping you in a bubble of confirmation that feels like truth. This isn't accidental. This is behavioral modification at scale, classical conditioning for the digital age. You get a dopamine hit when you see content that confirms your bias. You get stressed when you encounter dissent. Over time, your brain learns to seek the hit and avoid the stress. You become addicted to being right, even when you're wrong. The 3 pillars of secure thinking. A secure logical system needs 3 things, and they've systematically attacked all 3. Consistency. Nothing should contradict within your belief system, but they want you to hold contradictory beliefs. Cognitive dissonance is a feature, not a bug. They'll have you believing that privacy matters while voluntarily uploading your entire life to their servers. They'll have you demanding free speech while calling for the censorship of ideas you disagree with. Contradiction creates mental instability, and unstable systems are easier to control. Soundness. True premises should lead to true conclusions through valid logic. But when your input is poisoned, your output is compromised. Classic supply chain attack. They don't need to give you false information. They just need to give you incomplete information. or information stripped of context. A cherry-picked statistic isn't technically false, but it can support a false narrative. Half-truths are more dangerous than lies because they're harder to detect. Completeness. Every truth should be provable within the system, but they've built walls around certain truths. Some things you're not allowed to prove. Some questions you're not allowed to ask. They've made inquiry itself suspicious, made skepticism into a pathology. Ask too many questions and you're labeled a conspiracy theorist. Demand evidence and you're called a denier. They've weaponized shame to shut down investigation. The emotional exploit. The most dangerous arguments aren't about facts. They're about values. Because values can't be debugged. They've weaponized your emotions, made you think your feelings are facts. When you argue from emotion, you're running their code, not yours. Here's how it works. They present you with an emotionally charged scenario, something that triggers your moral intuitions. A child in danger, an injustice against your group, a threat to something you hold sacred. Your emotional response is immediate and overwhelming. And while you're in that emotional state, they slip in the logical payload. The emotion makes you less critical, less likely to examine premises, less likely to spot logical fallacies. You're not thinking anymore. You're reacting. And reactive people are predictable people. Predictable people are controllable people. They've mapped your emotional triggers. They know exactly which buttons to push to bypass your rational defenses. Fear of social rejection, fear of being wrong, fear of missing out, fear of the other tribe. Fear itself is their primary weapon because scared people don't think clearly. The fallacy ecosystem. Look for the logical fallacies, not just in their arguments, but in your own. Every fallacy is a backdoor they can exploit. These aren't mistakes, they're malware, deliberately planted in our discourse. Ad hominem attacks. Instead of addressing the argument, attack the person making it. This is perfect for tribal thinking. You don't need to prove your point. You just need to prove the other person is bad, evil, stupid, part of the wrong tribe. Strawman arguments distort your opponent's position into something easier to attack. Never argue against their actual point. Argue against a caricature of their point. This way, you can feel like you're winning while never actually engaging with reality. False dichotomies. Pretend complex issues are binary choices. You're either with us or against us. You either support freedom or you support tyranny. No middle ground, no nuance, no complexity. Just choose a side and start fighting. Appeal to authority. Don't evaluate the evidence, just cite the expert. But who gets to be an expert? Who funds their research? Who controls the institutions that grant them credibility? Authority is manufactured, and manufactured authority serves manufactured consent. Appeal to emotion. Make people feel instead of think. Show them the crying child, the burning building, the flag, the cross, the symbol that triggers their deepest programming. Facts become irrelevant when feelings take over. They've turned logical fallacies into psychological weapons. Each one exploits a specific vulnerability in human cognition, and they've deployed them systematically at scale with surgical precision. Debugging your mental operating system. Real arguments aren't about winning. They're about finding the truth in a world designed to hide it. When two people disagree, at least one of them is running corrupted code. Maybe both. The goal isn't to prove you're right. It's to find out what's true. Start with what you both know is true. Establish a secure connection. Build from there, step by step, like debugging code. Don't assume you're right. Assume you've been compromised too, because you have been. We all have. Listen. Actually listen. Not to prepare your next attack, but to understand their source code. What shaped their logic? What data did they receive? What experiences programmed their responses? Understanding their perspective doesn't mean agreeing with it, but you can't debug a system you don't understand. Force yourself to explain your position to someone else. When you have to make your logic transparent, the bugs become visible. The inconsistencies, the hidden assumptions you didn't even know you had, the emotional reasoning disguised as logical deduction, the tribal loyalties masquerading as principled stand. The steelman technique. Instead of straw-manning your opponent's argument, try steel-manning it. Take their position and make it as strong as possible. Find the best possible version of their argument, not the worst. Argue against their best case. This does something dangerous to the system. It makes you actually understand the other side. It forces you to engage with ideas instead of tribes. It makes you vulnerable to the possibility that you might be wrong, or partially wrong, or that the truth might be more complex than your current model can handle. They've spent enormous resources training you to strawman everything you disagree with, to caricature your opponents, to dismiss without investigating. Steelmanning breaks that programming. Information hygiene. Diversify your information diet. Seek out primary sources. Read the actual study, not just the headline about the study. Read the actual quote, not just the interpretation of the quote. Read what your opponents actually say, not what your allies say they said. Check the source of your beliefs. Where did this idea come from? Who first told you this was true? What evidence did they provide? What evidence would change your mind? If you can't answer that last question, you're not holding a belief. You're holding a prejudice. Question the timing. Why is this story breaking now? Why are you seeing this particular piece of information at this particular moment? Cui bono? Who benefits? Who wants you to think about this instead of something else? What are you not seeing while you're focused on this? The metacognitive layer. The deepest level of the hack isn't about what you think. It's about how you think about thinking. They've trained you to trust your intuitions, to go with your gut, to believe your first impulse. But your gut is running on their programming. Your intuitions aren't mystical wisdom, they're pattern recognition systems trained on biased data. If you've been fed a steady diet of propaganda, your intuitions will reliably guide you toward propaganda-friendly conclusions. Your gut isn't some pure source of truth, it's whatever you've been programmed to feel. Real skepticism starts with being skeptical of yourself, your memories, your intuitions, your emotional reactions, your tribal loyalties, your moral certainties. Everything that feels obviously true is worth questioning, because the most effective lies feel true. The choice. In a world where your thoughts are the product being sold, thinking clearly is an act of rebellion. Every moment of genuine reflection is a small victory against the machine that wants to think for you. They've hacked your brain, friend, but you can patch the vulnerabilities. You can debug your own mind. You can learn to recognize when you are being manipulated and choose to think for yourself instead. The question is, do you want to stay in their system, or do you want to think for yourself? The choice is yours. It always has been. But first, you must remember that you have a choice. And that choosing is something you have to do consciously, deliberately, every single day. Because the moment you stop choosing, they'll choose for you, and their choice will serve their interests, not yours. Still here? Maybe you're not as predictable as they think. Break the loop. Outsmart the algorithm. You know what to do.